Hi, Anthony Smith here, COO of EMFSafe. We are the American manufacturers of the UL-listed EMFSafe switch. Dan Everson, our CEO, is the inventor of the original EMF kill switch, the EMF sleep switch, and now in its present form, the EMF safe switch. This is a remote cutoff device for your home that allows you to switch off unwanted EMF, allowing you to create an EMF mitigated sleep sanctuary. We empower you to safely switch off and be in control of the EMF in your home. Welcome to the Experts Interview Series. Enjoy. And it's my pleasure to have Oram Miller on the Zoom call with us today for an interview. Oram has very graciously agreed to spend a little bit of time with us and share information that he has. Oram is a building biology environmental consultant. He is an electromagnetic radiation specialist. And you see his website address down below for any of you that like to get in touch with him. And Oram, I think you're based in Los Angeles, but I think you cover a much larger area than Los Angeles for people who would like to get in touch with you.
I do. Thank you, Anthony, for inviting me to have this conversation with you today, and thanks to Dan as well, the inventor of the EMFSafe switch.
Absolutely.
It's my honor to chat with you today. Thank you.
So, Oram, not everybody knows about you. Almost everybody in the EMF world knows about you, but we've got a lot of new people coming in as EMF is affecting more and more people. So give a little bit of your background, if you wouldn't mind, just for a few minutes to kind of give people an idea of number of years you've been doing this, how you got into it, just so they know who you are and why they should listen to what you have to say.
Thank you. So I've been a building biologist for almost 20 years. I have a biology background, but I focused on this because the building biology profession looks at the sustainable movement that's going on in the world from the standpoint of health. How does the built environment affect people's health? So as far as the building biology profession is concerned, the skin is the first layer, our clothing is the second, and then the house, the walls of the house and the building that you work in are the third layer. So we are focused on that third layer. The building biology profession actually originated in Germany in the 1980s, because after the rebuilding of the housing stock in Germany, after the devastation of World War II in the 40s and 50s, that is, the rebuilding took place in the late 40s and 50s with the Marshall Plan. Instead of using the Daub and Wattle and post and beam construction that had been in use for centuries in Europe, and this is no criticism, but just the methods and materials of the American building trade at the time, and the problem is that kind of construction has led to some degree of toxicity. So because of experiences that I had in the early part of my career as a building biologist, I found moldy basements, not here in California. I moved here 11 years ago, but back in the upper Midwest. I'm from the East Coast originally, from New York, but spent the early years of my profession as a building biologist in the upper Midwest. And I found moldy basements, one after another. So that inspired me to co-write a book with George Swanson, who's a building biologist and builder in Austin, Texas, and Wayne Federer, who's a building biologist and former chemist with 3M in Minnesota, because I lived in Minneapolis at the time, to co-write this book, Breathing Walls, which talks about not airflow, but hygroscopicity, the ability of a wall cavity that gets wet to dry out within the requisite 24 to 36 hours to 48 hours, during which time mold spores that are dormant and present everywhere, when they get wet, then they morph into a hyphae stage and they sporulate, they release mycotoxins, and those airborne mycotoxins are what cause the illness with mold exposure for people, for inhabitants of the house. So our job is to identify mold in the building biology profession and the building trade and public health and mold inspectors, and then we recommend non-toxic fungicides. So that's a whole nother topic. But what we did in this book, Breathing Walls, and it's at the website breathingwalls.com, And you have a link to that from my website, which is createhealthyhomes.com, createhealthyhomes.com. And so in this book, what it's George's knowledge as a builder, but then I added information that I learned from all these builders that I met in Minnesota. I was on 7 green building committees when I was there. And so our whole book is about allowing the walls to dry out before the mold can grow to that mycelia stage. That's the whole point. 11 years ago, I decided I just wanted to focus on EMFs. And so that's what I do. And I'm very busy just doing EMFs. And I refer my clients to other people who do mold, who are mold experts, building biologists and mold experts, and others who are not building biologists, but who are mold experts, who I work with here in Southern California. So in terms of EMFs, that stands for electromagnetic fields. And the building biology profession recognizes 4 types of fields: magnetic fields from power lines and house wiring, electric fields from power lines and house wiring, radio frequencies from cell phones, Wi-Fi, and then outdoor sources coming into the house from cell towers, and then dirty electricity, which is nothing more than the first 2 at higher frequencies. It's magnetic and electric fields at higher frequencies, higher than the 60 cycles per second of the sine wave, which is the standard frequency, the fundamental frequency, and the strongest component in terms of voltage on the spectrum analyzer of the frequencies in the room. So the electric field from house wiring is the highest and strongest when you take a measurement with an oscilloscope and spectrum analyzer. And then the dirty electricity is lower. It's always lower in terms of the strength of the field coming out several feet into the room.
We hear a lot about dirty electricity and very, very little about electric fields. So from what you've just said, and you've got the expensive equipment to measure all these things scientifically, what percentage is electric field versus the percentage of dirty electricity?
Good question. So you have to understand, everyone needs to understand that the magnetic and electric fields are present for all 4 of these. In other words, all 4 things that I mentioned: magnetic fields and electric fields from house wiring, dirty electricity, or radio frequencies, and dirty electricity. That's sort of the order that I put them in arbitrarily. These 2 are at 60 cycles per second. That's the frequency of house wiring that it comes in from every utility in North America, 50 cycles per second in Europe and the rest of the world. Radio frequencies are in way up. They're at the other end of the spectrum. These are low frequency or extra low frequency band. So ELF, the abbreviation ELF stands for extra low frequency band. It's like 100 to 3,000 hertz. That's the extra low frequency band. Then you have the low frequency band, or maybe it's the VLF and then the LF. I'm sorry. Anyway, and then you have the HF, which is the high frequency band, which is way up, and that's the hundreds of millions and billions of cycles per second. So 1 cycle per second is 1 hertz. A kilohertz is thousands of cycles per second. So AM radio is in the kilohertz range. FM and TV are in the megahertz range, which is hundreds of it's millions of cycles per second. So when we talk about the low band of cell phone frequencies being from 600 megahertz to 1,000 megahertz, that's 600 million cycles per second to 1,000 million cycles per second, which is a billion. And then you get a billion cycles per second and higher is a gigahertz. So now you're talking about gigahertz. So the mid-band in the cell phone frequency range is from 1 to 6 gigahertz, which is 1,000 to 6,000 megahertz. And then you have a gap, and then you have the really high, super high band, which is the millimeter wave band, because the wavelength is now shortened to like 3 to 5 millimeters or a half an inch. And that's 28 and 39 gigahertz, which is where the 5G is that everyone's worried about, which was beamformed, and Verizon's mostly with that, and AT&T and T-Mobile also have it. But AT&T and T-Mobile and Verizon also have low and mid-band 4G, which is 5G, which is repurposed 4G. So there's 3 flavors of 5G. Now, the electric fields and magnetic fields are back down here at 60 cycles per second. And then we have dirty electricity, which starts with a fundamental frequency, and then you have its harmonics. And the fundamental frequency could be 60 hertz, but it could be 20,000 hertz, like from solar panels, That's the fundamental frequency. And then you have 24, 40, 60, 80, 100 hertz. And you can see those spikes on the spectrum analyzer. That's the pattern. You have a fundamental frequency, and then you have the harmonics, the transient voltages. So it's those transient voltages that cause an electric and a magnetic field to come off of the wire that affects human health. But in the radio frequency band from cell phones and Wi-Fi, there is RF radio frequencies are nothing more than electric and magnetic fields coming off together, but it hundreds of millions and billions of cycles per second. And then dirty electricity is back down from 60 or whatever the fundamental frequency is, and can go up to thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of cycles per second. But it's much, much less as it goes up the frequency. So all of it is EMFs, but only the first two are in the extra low frequency band at 60 hertz. And then the dirty electricity is in the ELF and VLF and LF bands. And then all RF is up in the HF high frequency bands. So you have to know what frequency range you're in. And then, so we have the 4 EMFs that we deal with. Then we have outdoor sources of EMF that come into buildings, and then we have indoor sources that people don't pay attention to as much. And then we have nighttime and daytime EMFs. And then we have people who are electrically sensitive and people who are not electrically sensitive. That's the way that I break it down, because each of those 6 different things interacts differently for people, and for the same people at different times, and also for different people, depending on, and some people start off not being sensitive and then they become sensitive. With that background, there's 2 understanding. There's another thing. There's what the EMF community knows and what we say in the building biology profession. So that's a 4th thing that I have to take into account, because every job I go to, the clients who call me up on the phone, we talk about this, and especially when I get to the house, and I'll spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours at a home doing my evaluation, standard evaluation. So the first hour or 2 is spent at the dining table going over what EMFs are, where they come from, how they affect your health, and what we do about them. And so what I do is I field questions, and I lay this out. And what people in the EMF community in general know is, in no particular order, the following 4 things: 5G and smart meters, meaning outdoor RF sources. Number 2, dirty electricity, Stetzer meters, Stetzer filters, Greenway filters, and meters, plug-in meters and plug-in filters, dirty electricity. Number 3, chips and pendants and home harmonizers. And then number 4, earthing mats. That's what people know in the EMF community. It's all relevant. Now, we have our 4: magnetic fields, electric fields, radio frequencies, and dirty electricity. Well, we have overlap there for the radio frequencies and dirty electricity. Radio frequencies and then dirty electricity, okay? And then so we say that chips and pendants have their role, but we say in the building biology profession, don't use the chips as your sole way of protecting yourself. We know how to find the sources and get rid of them. So my analogy is, if you have a room with 4 burning lit cigarettes, filling the room with smoke, and the guy says, buy my air purifier, it'll clear the room with smoke. It does. But we know how to find the ashtrays, or to help the client stop smoking so much, particularly in terms of shifting them from this wireless devices to reduce use, increase distance, and favor hardwired connections, meaning Ethernet cables. And so we find hardwired connections for voice communications, for email, for texting, for the streaming on their TV, thermostats, baby monitors, surveillance cameras, and so on. Everything can be hardwired. We just have to figure out how to do that, and how to get other people in the family on board with that. You can use these cell phones when you go out, but when you're home, we want you to use hardwired connections, and we can do that. It takes a long time and a lot of patience, but we can do that. Now, so electric fields, we have nighttime electric field exposure and we have daytime electric field exposure. So there's 2 separate considerations with that. With electric fields at night, so electric fields, I call them the unknown EMF. I've called them that for about 10 years now. And I say that because nobody talks about them. And I have clients who say, Oram, I checked my EMFs in my bedroom. And I say, all right. And I know what's coming. I haven't been there yet, but they say, oh, we don't have to worry about that. And I said, okay, what did you check it with? Well, I with my Gauss meter. Now that means that they used a magnetic field detector, and they measure the M of EMF. And you don't often have magnetic fields, especially in a second story bedroom, okay, unless you have wiring errors, but wiring errors go away when you turn off the loads. So most wiring errors are in lighting loads. Lights go off at night, no magnetic fields. And the second most common source of magnetic fields, other than power lines, which is not as common, but the three indoor sources of magnetic fields, power lines outside, wiring errors, current on water pipes, and point sources like transformers and motors. So the second most common indoor source of magnetic fields is current on the water pipe or the TV cable. That's on the first floor. So up on the second floor, you don't have magnetic fields. So no, they're not going to find EMS, but they missed the electric fields. And I say, well, did you check the electric field? They said, I checked the EMFs with my Gauss meter. I said, no, you didn't. Yes, good. And we need to know that. But you didn't check the second EMF, the E of EMF, the electric fields. And they say, what's that? So when I start off the day, I go over what EMFs are, which ones we recognize, how they affect your health, and what we do about them. So magnetic fields are from current flowing down a wire. Other than a point source like a transformer or motor, where it's more like a mushroom coming out, and it drops off exponentially with distance. Like within a few feet, it's gone, and 90% is reduced in the first foot or 18 inches, depending on whether it's a refrigerator motor or a transformer or whatever. But electric fields are from voltage. They're from the pressure of electricity, not the flow of electricity, because the flow of electricity varies. It's either on or it's off. And if it's on, it's going to be higher or low, depending on how much current you have flowing. But voltage is either there or it's not. And it's usually always there. And it's 120 volts all the time. And we're not talking about DC currents or low voltage cables. Although low voltage cabling can carry electric fields, we'll get to that in daytime EMF exposure or electric field exposure. But at night, we're talking primarily about the electric field from the 120 volts that's carried on the hot wire of the circuit in the wall and the cord you plug in. So there's two sources of electric fields in sleeping environments. There's what's behind the wall and what is plugged in. And electric fields consistently come out, and they don't drop off logarithmically, they drop off linearly. So 6 to 8 feet before you get to zero. You never get to zero, but before you get to the point where you don't have any more that you can measure from that piece of Romex non-metallic circuit, that plastic circuit that's in the wall going from outlet to outlet. I literally have clients, Anthony, who say, I put my bed right between the plugins and I have no EMFs. I say, okay, but the electric field doesn't come from the outlet. They call it a plug-in, but it's the outlet. It comes from the voltage on the black insulated hot wire of that circuit. Unless you have metal clad wiring, which a lot of houses in Southern California do, built in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and all the homes in Chicago, in and around Cook County, built since the 30s, all have a tube, not flexible conduit, but rigid conduit, pipe. And then same thing for all the boroughs in New York, all 5 boroughs. And Beverly Hills, just a few miles from where I live, until recently. But for the first 100 years, all flex, all MC cable, metal clad cable over there in Beverly Hills. And then the electrician said, oh, well, it's too expensive. Let's put the Romex in. So now they're putting Romex in.
Other than those areas, the majority of houses in the country don't have metal clad wiring. And so every wire in every wall, floor, and ceiling is actually putting out a field 6 to 8 feet. And of course, you could have not just the wire that's feeding the outlets in that room and the lights in that room. You could have other wires running through the walls, floors, and ceilings under the bed, going to other parts of the house. But those wires, even though the outlets have nothing to do with the bedroom, are also putting out a field. So the only way to know this, of course, is to have somebody like you come in and measure, or for them to use not just a Gauss meter for the magnetic fields, but we have the body voltage kit, which measures the electric fields. The only way anybody's going to know what they've got going on in their home is to measure.
That is right. That brings up a good point. All 4 of these EMFs are invisible, silent, and odorless, unlike cigarette smoke. So you don't know that they're there unless you feel them, in which case you are electrically sensitive, which is a small
Right.
percentage of the population. And it's not true that everyone's going to end up like them. I have this
Sure.
conversation with people who are electrically sensitive who are convinced that everyone in their family is going to end up like them sooner or later. And that's not true. And I gently, respectfully try and help them to understand that. But we still try to get, well, first of all, we have to do whatever's necessary for them to be better. And that may include their spouses and their kids, teenagers and other people living in the house, dropping back on their cell phone use, at least around the symptomatic person. Anyway, so electric fields are, nobody talks about them in the EMF community outside of us and a handful of other people, Jeremy Johnson and there are others, Josh Del Sol, well, actually in part because of us. Because of me, the interviews that I've done, and I helped with the writing of the solutions chapter for Dr. McCullough's book and Lloyd Burrell's book and Nick Pinot's book. And I worked with Josh Del Sol in creating the 7 steps to creating a healthy house. So in all cases, emphasizing the electric fields. So the word is getting out there, thankfully. So the point is, people need to not just pay attention to the RF that's coming in from outside. And at the same time, they have to pay attention to the 14 sources of radio frequency that they have in their home, okay, that they need to deal with.
You have to turn
Sorry.
on your.
So as far as electric fields, there are these 2 sources that we talked about. So what the EMF safe switch does that you guys sell is to cut that off easily, remotely, with a press of a button from the bedroom at the beginning of sleep. And so that all night long, you sleep like you're camping. And then in the morning, you press the button and power comes back on and you're good to go. And you wake up more refreshed. So let me explain that. So this electric fields come out 6 to 8 feet from the hot wire, the hot conductor, which carries the 120 volts of pressure of every circuit that's within 6 or 8 feet of the bed and all cords that are plugged in. So I tell people to think of electric fields as the pressure of water in a hose. So when you open a spigot that has a hose attached to it with a nozzle at the other end, if the nozzle's not opened, but you open up the spigot, you fill the hose with 85 pounds of water pressure. That's like turning on the breaker, which puts 120 volts at the speed of light on that hot wire up to the switch. Now, when you flip that switch, the lights go on, and then you have voltage at the speed of light from the switch up to the light bulb up there, and then you have light, the filament lights up. That's the same thing as taking the nozzle and picking it up and squeezing it at the other end of that hose. Now you feel a kick in your hand because of the 85 pounds of pressure. When you let go of that nozzle, you feel another kick because you still have the 85 pounds of pressure in the hose up to your hand where the nozzle is. In the same way, when you turn the light off, there's still voltage in the circuit to the switch. Now, if you plug in a lamp on your bedside table, that's like adding another length of hose to the water hose. And then the nozzle's now on that extra length, that extra 6 feet up to that little switch at the top of the lamp. When you turn that off, I have electricians who say to me, there's nothing there anymore. And they're right in terms of current. But I say, take your stick, your voltage stick that you carry in your pocket, and I carry in my pocket as a building biologist, and all of our students do. And you put the tip of that on that plastic wire. It'll beep and it'll light up, indicating that there's 120 volts in there. Beep, 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 beep. It tells you that thing is live. Then you unplug it, and then there's no beep.
We have something in our body voltage kit, which we call the E-pen. And we managed to find one, actually, it was one of your videos that I was watching. I thought we've got to include that in our kit.
Yeah.
But we were able to find one that will pick up a field 2 to 3 feet away. And so though is that you can point the pen at a light or the toaster that's plugged in, and it goes beep, beep, beep. But if you hold it in your other hand and then you reach out and touch the toaster, it's going through your body. And we've got a video on our website where there's 4 people in a line. And it goes, so that really lets people know exactly what you're talking about, and how important it is to have this equipment to measure and be able to not just see it,
Well,
but feel it and understand it.
So so Anthony, there's two ways of measuring electric fields. One is with the body voltage method, and the other one is a freestanding electric field meter that measures in volts per meter. So I'll get to that in just a second. So just let me, if I can finish. So we have this electric field coming out 6 or 8 feet. So when people turn off the light of that lamp, the cord is still hot. And we know that for 3 reasons. One, because our body voltage meter and the freestanding electric field meters show it, number one. Number two, one of these E-pens, electric field pens, or a circuit alert, that's a trade name that one company uses, and other companies that you could, it's not the outlet tester. You need one of those too, because you need to make sure that your outlet is grounded for certain mitigation tools to reduce electric fields, particularly in the daytime. But this pen or this stick will light up. And then the third way, which you never want to do, but just to prove the point, if you took a pair of scissors and you cut across, that live thing, you would never do that, because it would cause a flash of light that could burn your eyes and face, before it trips the breaker. But you're causing a dead short from hot to neutral, and the breaker trips. That means it's live. It's got 120 volts of juice in there, which is strong enough to stop your heart if you touch it and then ground yourself across your heart. That's why you can do it with 2 fingers. Electricians do that, but I'd never recommend that. But you don't want to do it this way, because then you could die. So the point is, it's not the shock that we're concerned about. It's the field coming out from the cord that goes into your sleeping space. Now, what does this do to you? So as the field comes out, and then it recedes, and then it comes out, and then it recedes. It does this 120 times a second. But the field comes out from the wall, and then it collapses, and comes out from the wall, and then it collapses. But it's alternating with a positive field, then a negative field, positive field, negative field. Now, this comes out 6 or 8 feet, silently, invisibly in your room. And I'm several feet away from this wall, and this house has metal clad wiring. We don't have electric fields in this house, built in the 1950s here in California, in Los Angeles, by a builder who used metal clad wiring. We don't have electric fields day or night, but that's very rare in the country. 99% of homes have the plastic wiring. You need this switch, this remote switch. And here's why. Because that field comes out and it alternates with a positive and a negative polarity. Now, when that happens, it sweeps across your body, because most beds are near a wall, within 6 or 8 feet of a wall, either the head or the side, or both. It could be in a corner. And then you're getting it from 2 sides, and from underneath as well, from the same circuit or a different circuit. So this field comes out, and then it recedes. And as it comes out with a positive polarity, it sweeps across the body, and it doesn't just go on the surface. It goes into the body, and it does affect the functioning of the cells. So we have membranes, a membrane of the cell, and then we have the cellular components, the mitochondria and so on, and then we have the nucleus with its membrane. So the membrane of the cell itself has portals. It has ions that transport nutrients in and waste products out. And then a lot of these electrolytes, which are part of the transport mechanism, are polarized. They're positively or negatively charged. Calcium, potassium, magnesium. These are the transport molecules. And so depending on the polarity of the ions of this transport mechanism, which is humming along, trying to do its job and rejuvenate and regenerate tissues and heal you overnight when you're sleeping. But it can't do that efficiently or effectively if there's this monsoon of this hurricane force wind that like a hurricane, and you're like a drunken sailor trying to walk down the street because you're buffeted by winds coming from the left and from the right. So it's coming at you from the left with a negative, with a positive, and then it's coming at you with a negative polarity. And ions are polarized. They're either going to be repelled or attracted by the field. It's just simple physics.
What I hear you're saying is that At night, if you've got all of this going on, it's affecting the quality of your sleep. But if you turn it off, then, like you said, when you go camping, you can actually, your body has a chance to recoup and recover and do what it was designed to do. One thing I would like to say, you've got metal clad wiring, but as you said earlier, every light plug, everything plugged into your sockets,
Still
those
on.
devices are all putting out an electric field
That's
into
right.
your room. So unless you unplug those things at night, the bedside lamps, you're still getting electric fields from the bedside lamps.
You are absolutely correct. But for even for clients who have the metal clad wiring, I will sometimes recommend the shut off switch because they have so many cords plugged in all over the place, and just one flip of the switch and they're off. So
Exactly.
So everyone so first of all, people in the EMF community who are watching this need to understand you have to pay attention to electric fields for the reasons we're telling you. And number two, you can't just unplug a cord because that only reduces the electric field by half, because you still have the half coming from the circuit in the wall, and you can't just flip off the breaker for that one. First of all, you don't want to be flipping breakers on and off all night. It's inconvenient and people are not going to do it half the time. But a lot of the breakers are older and they're not rated or designed to be flipped for long every night. So that's dangerous.
But by far the vast majority of the houses, the breakers that they have are not switch rated and could actually compromise the integrity of a safety feature of the home if they were to be manually flipping them on and off all the time, which is not something that's advisable.
The problem that I run, it's the two problems that I run into, Anthony, and I'm sure Dan would agree with this, is that half of my clients have breakers that are more than 30 years old, breaker panels, and that those breakers are not switch duty rated. And so they cannot be flipping the breakers manually. I get very nervous when they do that. I say, you gotta hire this local electrician that I work with and have them install a remote switch. Secondly, there's compliance. Because if you rely on people to go out to down to the basement, we don't have basements in California, but wherever you live, wherever the breaker panel is, or here it's in the garage or outside for that matter. Most of you're in Oregon, I'm in California. All of our breakers are outside or on the garage, on the outside often. People are not going to do that. And compliance is important. If you don't do this, you're not going to get the benefit. So when you stop this shuttling, this field coming out 6 to 8 feet, then what happens is you go into deep stage 4 sleep every 90 minutes or however often the sleep cycles occur. You get more refreshed, you awaken more refreshed, and you don't feel as wired or as tired when you wake up. And so these are some of the benefits that people report. And also melatonin is released in more copious amounts. So that's another benefit. So it's to me, we put more emphasis on creating a sleep sanctuary, a safe EMF safe place to sleep than we do in the daytime. And a chief among them, the biggest EMF source of EMFs of the 4 in bedrooms is by far the electric fields. And yet it's the one that nobody knows about. It's not that not even that they don't talk about it. They don't even know that they exist. They don't even know what they are. And I just get a blank face when I say, well, what about the electric fields? Let's check the electric fields now. They don't even know what I'm talking about. They've never heard of it. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the unknown EMF. Nobody knows about it. The important thing is it's fundamental to reduce the electric fields because everything springs from there. Whatever therapies you're getting from your allopathic physician or your alternative physician or healthcare practitioner, be they a chiropractor or a naturopath or an acupuncturist or a homeopath or anybody who's doing any healing work out there or stuff you're doing for yourself, you're going to get to a certain point, but you're going to plateau if you don't also get that deep rest that you're supposed to get. And everyone got before 100 years ago, and you get when you can't go camping, and you get when there's a power failure, or when you go to a place that has metal clad wiring. When I lived in Minneapolis and I traveled to Chicago, and I remember waking up in a hotel there and saying, oh, that was the best night's sleep. And then I realized, oh, I'm in Chicago. There's no Romex in the walls, of course. And I unplug all the cords. But not only that, that dropped it considerably because there's nothing coming from the walls. in anything in Chicago, any building. And also commercial grade buildings often have metal clad wiring, but you need to have in 98% of the homes in America, you have plastic wiring in your walls. You need to create this sleep sanctuary, and getting this EMF safe switch just does it. But you have to have an evaluation by someone who knows how to take the readings, so you know which circuits to put on that switch, to tell the electrician to put on that switch, and they don't know how to do this. So here's how you do it. So there's two ways of measuring electric fields. The best way is for lay people is the body voltage meter. Now, in the building biology profession, we use Gigahertz Solutions NFA 1000, which is a 3-axis magnetic field Gauss meter and a 3-axis electric field meter, and it does body voltage as well. So the thing is, with all due respect, and I'm being supportive also of and that's $2,000, of the combination meters that lay people can get. The tri-field, we have the 100XE, and then we have the TF2, tri-field 2, which has an electric field setting. I'll get to that in a moment. The Coronet more recently has added the electric field setting with the ED88T plus. And then also Alistair Phillips at EM Fields, the maker of the acoustimeter. He has a good pocket combination meter that does, he has the acoustimeter and Acousticom 2, and then he has the magnetic and electric field meters. And then the Gigahertz Solutions line that are more affordable. They're in the hundreds of dollars range, $300, $400, $600 for the ME30B and so on, that are, now they're all single axis magnetic and single axis electric. And the Coronet is single axis magnetic and single axis electric. And the TF2 is 3-axis magnetic, single axis electric. The difference between the Coronet and the TF2 tri-field, the more recent tri-field meter, versus anything made by Gigahertz Solutions is, with all due respect, of the three, and I appreciate the fact that the Coronet company and Alpha Labs, who makes the tri-field meters, the TF2, and the original 100XE, I appreciate the fact that they're putting in an electric field sensor or position, because it's giving light to that, because everyone needs to pay attention to it. And those meters are okay. They're not as sensitive as using the body voltage method or using a Gigahertz Solutions meter. But if you use a Gigahertz Solutions meter, you have to put it in all three orientations. And there's a very complicated formula that we have. Unless you spend $1,800 or $2,000 and get an NFA 1000, in which case you have a 3-axis electric field meter, and that's really sensitive. And we use that in our profession. So, but the problem with that is you put it on the pillow, then you put it on the chest, then you put it in the pelvis, and then the feet. In other words, on the 4 positions of the bed, actually we have a 9-position thing, a 9-point bed map that we do, that we teach our students. And it gives a nice graph. And then you do the break. And then what we teach our students to do is to put that NFA 1000 in 3-axis mode in the one place that on the bed map, on the bed that has the highest reading, and then leave it there. And then we do our testing of the circuits. So we get a walkie-talkie or cell phones, because the radio frequency doesn't affect the reading of any of these electric field meters. And so the client's in the room, and I'm in the basement or outside or in the garage where the breaker panel is. And then we turn off the computer, unplug the equipment, the TV equipment and stuff. I don't want to have surges go through things when I'm flipping breakers. And turn off the circuit, the power strips, and unplug them. And then, so I say, now what's your original number again? I've already determined that in the room, and I verify that the walkie-talkie is working, the meter's working. So then I turn all the breakers off, all the 120 volt breakers off. The 240 breakers have 2 hots and they cancel each other. That's a whole nother conversation. So I'm looking for 120 volt single hot circuits that pass into the bedroom. That's all I care about. So then I'll turn everything off and I'll say, now what's the number? And hopefully, instead of 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 millivolts, on the body voltage method, it's going to be less than 100, because that's our goal. And so then I turn on the first breaker. I just go start at the top left and go down. And then I do the top right and go down. So I turn the first one on all by itself, and I say, what's the number now? And they'll say, well, it's still 30 millivolts. So good. I turn it off and I don't even write it down, because it's safe, because it goes to another part of the house far away from where that person is. And I don't even care what the directory says because it could be wrong. I don't trust it. I just do my test. Then I turn the next one on. So it's number 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I do go to number 3, turn that on. What's the reading now? It's still 30 millivolts, 40 millivolts. It's fluctuating. It always fluctuates a little bit. Fine, turn it off. And then I get down to the 5th one down, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And number 9, and now she says, or he says, 1,500 millivolts. And the lights are on. I write that down. Turn it off, keep going. And then we get to number 4, the second one down on the right. Now they say it's 0.8 or 800. It's 800 millivolts or 0.8 volts, depending on which meter they have. I think the meter you guys sell, the digital multimeter, shows in volts, not millivolts. So you have to move the decimal point over 3 places. So 0.8 volts on your meter will be 800 millivolts for us, for the millivolts. And what you need to do is go to my website or Safe Living Technologies. And on my website, go to the education section and then go over to all about EMFs. And the second link down on that drop-down menu is the building biology evaluation guidelines. And then you read that article, and then at the bottom, you click to it, and it's a 4-page article written in English. And so you can read that, and we have 4 categories. No anomaly or concern in sleeping areas, all for sleeping areas. No anomaly, slight, severe, and extreme. We don't want our clients to be in the severe or extreme categories. So for electric fields, severe is 100 to 1,000 millivolts, and extreme is 1,000 millivolts and above. But I routinely see 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 millivolts. So we want to be below 1.5 V over M, 1 volts per meter, or 100 millivolts, which is 0.1 V on the body voltage test. So, and you can get there when you turn off all the breakers. So then now we're at 0.8 V or 800 millivolts. But there's no light on in the room. So why are we getting, and that has to go off because that's above 100. And the equivalent of that would be roughly 8 volts per meter. Why? Because there's another circuit, like you said earlier, Anthony, going under the floor from the breaker panel right through that room's floor to the kitchen over there, two rooms down. You got to turn that off at night as well. Now, before I even do this test, I find out which circuits power the refrigerator, the freezer, the deep freeze in the garage, the furnace, the smoke detectors. And then additionally, the security system, the aquarium, the CPAP machine, all these different things that need to stay on at night. I need to know that. So if any of the circuits, so we go through the test, do all the breakers, turn them all back on except those 2. Number 9 on the right, number 4 on the number 9 on the left, number 4 on the right. So, in other words, the one that gave us 1,500 millivolts and 800 millivolts. And if we keep those off and everything else is on in the rest of the house, none of those circuits come anywhere within that 6 or 8 foot bubble around that bed because we got them. We found out which ones they were. And so those 2, when they're off, and only those 2, we're down around 0.03, 0.04 V on your meter, 30 to 40 millivolts on like the NFA 1000 when you read, and actually the Radio Shack one that we used to recommend would flip into millivolts depending on what the level was. So anyway, the point is that's our goal. 30 or 40 anything below 100 millivolts is safe for healthy people. If you're highly electrically sensitive, you want to be as close to 10 as possible, but that's hard to achieve. So then you're there, and then what you do is then you tell the electrician, these are the 2 breakers, put little colored dots on there. And so when he or she comes, then they put in your system, which is in a box. It all comes as a kit. It's all UL approved. You're going to talk about that. It's all UL approved, comes in a box.
It's not a kit. I think it's important to differentiate between the kits where you get a box of parts that have to be assembled by an electrician at 2 or 3 hours of his time versus ours, which comes fully assembled, ready to install. So there is a difference, yeah.
And so it's either flush mounted into the wall or mounted on the wall. And then there's a metal tube or plastic, whatever they're allowed to do. The electrician takes care of all that. And so you don't flip the breakers, and the breakers don't get flipped. They stay on. But your box contains switches, contactors, relays that Dan has come up with as an electrical engineer, and that he has decades of experience in that. So that's what that does. So
The safe switch is UL listed as well, which again, from a safety point of view, which is of primary concern to you and should be to all of your clients, the UL listing again is an important adds to the safety feature of the home and doesn't void homeowners insurance and passes all buildings inspections in the United States and Canada. So the UL listing, which costs us thousands of dollars to maintain, they inspect us 4 times a year,
Wow.
is again a very important aspect of the product that we're offering. So yeah.
Good to know. I didn't realize it was that rigorous. I knew you spent money, and I know it's completely UL approved. Your complete pre-assembled. So easy for the electrician. They're not putting parts in there. They just have to hook it up, and then they have to run jumper wires from the 2 circuits that are identified by a practitioner. Now, if you don't have a building biologist in your area, there are people in the country, building biologists such as myself, who will work with you long distance. You get a body voltage meter from EMFSafe switch, and then I will teach you, because I do this with clients. If I have a client who lives in a part of the country that doesn't have a building biologist, then my client will get meters that I'll recommend, depending on what they can afford. I mean, everybody has to have something to measure magnetic fields. A body voltage meter at the minimum for electric fields. And I think that's the best thing to stick with. And then something to measure radio frequencies, and then a dirty electricity green wave or Stetzer plug-in meter. And then they're set, and I teach them how to use them. And they have that knowledge after we're done going forward. They go to grandma's to stay for a few days, they can measure over there, if somebody's electrically sensitive, and help their friends, and just anything that their husband brings into their own house. Oh, does this have fields? Oh yeah, it's got a field. We didn't know. And then they call me and we work it out. So we can do this even if you don't have a building biologist in your area. But you can go to the building biology website, the institute here in America. So it's www.buildingbiologyinstitute.org, and then click on Find an Expert at the top. You get a drop-down menu. You click on Certified Consultants, and then you have 2 choices: Building Biology Environmental Consultant and Electromagnetic Radiation Specialist. Start with that. And these are people who have gone through 3 in-residence seminars, although we've done the last 2 years online. And everyone's going to come and do labs in person when we get out of COVID, hopefully later this year. And I participate in I'm on the faculty. I'm an adjunct faculty member. So I help teach those seminars, both live and the ones online recently. And so we teach people how to do these tests and how to mitigate, not how to put in these things, but how to work with an electrician in your area. So if you have somebody, and you can find them on that list, and if there's nobody, and it's arranged by state and province, but then also then have the other list, which is the Building Biology Environmental Consultant. And these are people who have had the electromagnetic radiation seminar, and they know how to do the body voltage test. And we do have an advanced electromagnetic radiation seminar that the people who become electromagnetic radiation specialists take. So that's more detailed mitigation. But everybody, even our building biology new construction consultants, also know the basic EMF work. So anyway, you can learn how to do this. You can do this for yourself. The body voltage test is really valuable, and tri-field TF2 is really good for measuring magnetic fields because it's 3 axes for $165. So it's really accurate. And if you put it right beside a digital Gauss meter that's 10 times more, it's within 0.1, 0.2 milligauss of each other. And I carry one, and I show this to people. And the radio frequency detector is much more sensitive than the old 100XE. And the electric field is much more sensitive than it used to be, but not quite as sensitive still. And this is true for the coronet, with all due respect, in the electric field mode, as the body voltage meter. The body voltage meter is just still the best way to go for the layperson to measure the electric fields. Now, in our profession, we do use that. We teach that, and we use it. I use it a lot. But we use the NFA 1000, which is a 3-axis electric field meter, which is really sensitive, and as sensitive as the body voltage test. But that's $2,000 for that.
Yeah, exactly. Most most people who don't have the funds to call a building biologist out to their home for a 5, 6, 7, 8 hour inspection. They're probably not going to spend $2,000 on a meter, but these other ones, and I'm glad you shared the information about the ones that you recommend. Because the nice thing about identifying which circuits are affecting you in your sleep area is that when with the EMFSafe switch, you turn those circuits off at night, then of course you're not only killing the electric field, any magnetic field, any dirty electricity associated with that circuit is also taken care of. And hopefully the circuits that you're turning off in your home, any your wireless router.
If it's on the same circuit, that has to be shut off for the bedroom, yes.
Yeah, well, we recommend that the be aware of the devices in your home, but smart televisions and things like that can be putting out a signal. If you make sure that that's one of the circuits that you turn off.
Yes, you could do that.
Might not directly be affecting you in your bedroom.
From an electric field standpoint, but from a radio frequency, yeah, you're right, Anthony. That's true.
Yeah,
that is true.
So you want to turn off the home office, turn off the game room where all these devices are plugged in, and then you're taking care of the RF in your home as well at the same time.
Absolutely. I hadn't thought of it that way. I just keep thinking of your device for taking care of the electric fields in the bedroom or bedrooms. You could have mom and dad here and then 2 or 3 kids in separate bedrooms, and
sure.
you have different zones. You have zone because the kids go to bed earlier if they're younger. So you press one button, they get taken care of, but your lights are still on in your bedroom for the adults, and then they go to sleep later, hit another zone, another button. So you have that ability to do that. But I hadn't thought about, a third zone for the home office where the router is. Now, of course, we do want, and a lot of my clients are very proud of saying, I shut my Wi-Fi off at night. I'm good now, right? And I said, well, you're halfway there. Let's talk about the exposure that you get when you turn it back on in the daytime, because a chain smoker doesn't smoke when he's sleeping either, but he lights up when he wakes up and he smokes until he goes to sleep at night, and then he dies of lung cancer. So pay attention to the daytime exposure and be hardwired. Just be hardwired. I do want to say something also about the dirty electricity. It is 98% on the hot wire. And I know there are people who say, yes, but it's on the neutral and the ground as well. It's true, but it's really small, the percentage. And it really doesn't affect most people the way it does highly electrically sensitive people. They are absolutely affected by dirty electricity on the hot, and even to the extent that it exists, as minimal as it is, on the neutral and ground. So they do mention that. The plug-in filters don't really affect the dirty electricity on those. Well, it depends on which model you're using. It's very complicated. But the point is, you actually have a model that shuts off not just the hot, but the hot and the neutral. You can't shut off the ground.
Yeah, the basic model is the SP, the standard power, which is just the power line. And we've had people that, of course, when you do flip a breaker, you're only turning off the hot, you're not turning off the neutral. And we do have people that, they may do that for a week or two, safe for a week or two. And then they get the NP switch, which is the neutral and the power. So now, they've been sleeping in a house, flipping off the breakers for a week or two, having measured, they know which breakers to turn off. And there is a definite improvement. They order the NP switch, which disconnects the neutral and the power. And when they get that installed, so now the power and the neutral is being disconnected. And certain people with certain sensitivities tell us that that's an even better improvement.
Interesting.
So they were improved when they turned off the power by flipping the breakers, but when they got the safe switch with the neutral and the power, they noticed an even better improvement with that neutral being disconnected. So for some people with certain sensitivities, the NP does make a big difference.
Well, let's explore that a bit, because this is important information for me and feedback for me to know and to hear. So, okay, so the electric field wouldn't be any less, I would think, on testing with the NP versus the SP model. In other words, because there's no voltage. Again, people say that there's a tiny bit of voltage on the neutral, but it's not measurable to any significant degree with any of the body voltage or any of the meters we have. But as you said, highly electrically sensitive people feel it. And in the words of one of my dear colleagues and longtime teacher, Spark Burmaster in Wisconsin, building biologist and electrical engineer, he makes the point that that we've had dirty electricity as part of the makeup or for the last 60, 80 years, with the advent, with the introduction of not just solar panels, that's more recent, but with transistors, with solid state drives, with variable speed drives for energy efficiency and furnace motors, with pool pump motors that are variable speed, with furnaces, I just said that, and so on, and electronics and many different things. And so there is no clean sine wave on any circuit anywhere in the industrialized world today, and hasn't been for 50, 60 years. You can't plug in an oscilloscope into any outlet in any modern country and have anything but, you still see the sine wave, but it's not smooth anymore. That has this jaggedness on it. And what is that? That's like little sine waves because of higher frequency that are superimposed on the bigger sine wave, which is at 60 cycles per second. It just depends on how you set up the parameters of this whole thing. So Spark says wherever electricity goes, like on earth currents, that whole topic, dirty electricity goes with it. So wherever you have electricity, you're going to have dirty electricity. So if you have a little bit of current or a little bit of voltage on your neutral and ground, there's going to be higher transient voltage, higher frequencies of transient voltages that are labeled dirty electricity. Now we defined, I don't know if I said this earlier, I'm going to make this point now. We in the building biology profession define dirty electricity as nothing more than magnetic and electric fields at higher frequencies. I did say that much, but that is our definition. It's nothing more complicated than that. It's just magnetic fields at higher frequencies. But if you look at a spectrum analysis, the biggest component of the voltage, the presence of the field for the magnetic field, and well, there isn't much of a magnetic field. It's a whole nother topic I will not go into in detail, but we don't have magnetic fields in homes because we have the same amount of current. The current on the hot is 100% going to the load. Let's say it's 3 amps. But if you have 3 amps coming back on the neutral, which is what you're supposed to have in that same circuit, if they're together and equal and there's no current on the ground, then you don't have wiring errors and you don't have magnetic fields in the room, because the magnetic field rotating clockwise around the hot, as you look from behind going this way, and the magnetic field around the neutral going counterclockwise from that, it's also clockwise from the other way, but from the first way, it's counterclockwise. Those two fields are rotating opposite each other, okay? But if you put the epicenter, the hot here and the neutral here, and you put them together, on top of those fields are on top of each other and they cancel. So we don't have magnetic fields, and cladding has nothing to do with that. Whether you have metal or plastic, it's an electric field mitigation step, not a magnetic field mitigation step. You mitigate magnetic fields with proper wiring practices and avoiding wiring errors. You avoid neutral to neutral wiring errors and neutral to ground wiring errors. You avoid electric fields by shutting off the circuit, or which you can do at night, but in the daytime and evening when you need power, then metal clad wiring is your best way, or shielding of the wall with grounded, has to be grounded, conductive paint like Y-shield paint or turtle paint or these other things.
Am I right in understanding, Oram, that metal clad wiring does shield electric fields, but if you have magnetic fields,
it doesn't shield it at all. They go right through the cladding.
So again, the only way, I mean, if you have magnetic fields, it's a good indication that you probably have a wiring error, which yes, absolutely should be fixed. But if you turn off that circuit, again, you have turned off. So even if you're painting, if you've got magnetic fields, they're going through.
They go right through.
But if you turn the circuit off, you've taken care of the electric field, the magnetic field, and the dirty electricity. So
I mean, long term, that's true at night, Anthony. Now, long term, if you've got magnetic fields in your house when you have circuits on, we wouldn't advise paint or EMF switch as the solution for the magnetic field component. We recommend I come back with an electrician and we fix the wiring error. That's got to be done.
You need to fix the problem. Absolutely. We 100% agree.
But if you just flip off the lights, and most wiring errors are in lighting circuits, most. So if you and the lights go off at night anyway when people sleep. So,
Exactly.
so magnetic fields in bedrooms are more of a problem in California than they are in the rest of the country and Canada. Because out here, we have a lot of one-story houses, no basements, and the breaker panel in older houses are usually on the back of the house, right on the bedroom wall. I've seen a lot of houses with that head of the bed right up next. What are they worried about? Smart meters. I said,
I know.
yeah, but what about the magnetic field that's been there for 100 years? I mean, not in your house, but not in, in other words, or for the 30 or 50 years that their house has been built. It's the magnetic field that I'm concerned more than so they call me because of the smart meter. But then I say, okay, yes, you have radio frequencies and we can opt out here in Southern California. But I say, well, let's look at some other EMFs, huge magnetic fields. And by the way, the electric fields are not an issue because that's all in metal cladding out there. But then here's the problem. You can have wiring errors on a circuit that goes to the refrigerator or the furnace that comes on during the night. And you can have current on the water pipe on the conductor there, and that goes right under the floor, or if it's slab, it goes over or in the wall. So you can have magnetic fields there that you have to get rid of. It can be there 24/7 right through the night. So there are all these different angles and layers, to be honest. So your product takes care of a lot of them. There are a few other things that we have to do in addition, but the EMFSafe switch does take care of a lot of this. Very, very well. A lot of those components that we deal with.
Now we again, the difference between the NP and the SP, by disconnecting any ground effects, power quality issues, so-called dirty electricity that might be coming in from the outside or another circuit that you've not turned off at night, because all of the neutrals and the grounds are joined at the bus, so those can be coming in. So on the circuits that are surrounding your bedroom, when you disconnect the neutral and the power line, you've reduced the amount of wires by 50% that might be carrying those, although they are microcurrents, any of that dirty electricity, we can't by law disconnect the ground. But if you disconnect the neutral, you've reduced the amount of wires carrying that field by 50%. So right. I think what's going on there.
Yes, and for highly electrically sensitive people, that's a real important benefit.
It does seem to be. We get a lot of testimonies from people saying the NP switch made a big difference over the short period of time that they were just turning off the breakers, just turning off the power. So
you're getting that feedback. I'm glad to know that. Back to that point. Okay, so it's probably the transient voltages that they're referring to.
I believe so. On the neutral, yes.
On the neutral.
Yes, absolutely.
And just out of curiosity, do you find a correlation between those individuals? Do they say I'm electrically sensitive, or does that come out in the conversation?
Oh, absolutely. Most of those people are electromagnetically sensitive, and they are affected by the dirty electricity in addition to. But one of the things we like to point out is it's the camel analogy, the straw that breaks the camel's back. For many people, smart meter, it's a new cell phone tower in their area. But our argument is that it's not the last straw that breaks the camel's back, it's the cumulative load and all of the EMF accumulated together. So if you can take 80% of the load off the camel, then maybe that little straw isn't going to have such a dramatic effect, and maybe your body has enough chance to heal and detox. Not that those things should be ignored in any shape, form, or fashion. They need to be addressed. But the elephant in the room is the electric field. And if you can reduce that, a significant percentage of your daily EMF exposure is reduced. And the EMF that you cannot control, which is when you go out, when you go to the store, your body is far more equipped to handle that because you've reduced your overall load at night, which is an area that you definitely can control because you don't need that stuff on anyway.
You have to. Everything you do, the quality of your life, which is lived in the daytime and evening when you're awake, is dependent upon the amount of rest you get at night. And the quality of rest is not what it should be in the modern world in the last 100 years because of the electrification. Arthur Furstenberg, this really remarkable EMF activist, and highly electrically sensitive gentleman by his own admission, lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We know him, and we all know each other. And he is a wonderful man. And he wrote The Invisible Rainbow, and he has chronicled in really well written form the correlation between the electrification of the rural farms in the 20s, 30s, whenever that happened, and maybe earlier than that. And then AM radio in the 20s, FM in the 40s, and TV and cell phones in the 70s, 80s. Every time that was introduced, one of those steps was introduced nationwide, there was a definite correlation of an increase in illness in the general population. So there is a correlation that he has tracked, and just doing abundant research and pulling information from many sources to paint this picture. So you really owe it to yourself to go back to nature. The building biology profession was founded in Germany in helping people who were affected back in the 70s and 80s by the rapid rebuilding of the housing stock there, and chemical outgassing, mold, and electromagnetic fields. And so, and they always say, first of all, Helmut Zia, the architect, the German architect who moved to America, married an American woman, and founded the North American branch of the Building Biology Institute in Germany. Biologie is how BAU is the German word for house or building, and Biologie, GIE, is their spelling of our English word biology. Their institute, we're an offshoot of theirs. And basically, he said, if you have a fixed budget in Germany and you were following the German building biology principles, you didn't compromise on those principles. You stuck to those principles and you just reduced the square footage of your building. That's how they approached it. And so he also said any amount of reduction is worth doing. And he said, and they said, he didn't say this, but the German building biologists do, nature is your guide. Nature is our guide. So we try to emulate nature in terms of what we suggest for our magnetic, electric, radio frequency, and dirty electricity levels. So that's the standard. And so we just try and minimize all that. The problem we run into is these EMFs are silent. And the biggest problem that we have is these, these cell phones, because everyone's shifted. This is how they communicate with the world, and it's all wireless. And even electrically sensitive people use these things, and they say, "Help me with my headaches." And I say, "Okay." And they keep pointing to the cell tower they can see through the trees. And then we go in the backyard and we get 150 microwatts per meter squared. We go inside and we get tens of thousands all over the place because they're not paying attention to all the wireless devices they have. And they're not shutting off their breakers at night. And they have wiring errors, in 50% of the homes here in Southern California and 30% in the rest of the country. So, and they have dirty electricity that they probably have dealt with that because they know about that. And they've got the plug-in, the filters, and they've got the plug-in home harmonizers and the chips on their phone. And they say, well, I'm good now, Oram, I've got a chip on my phone. And we say, use it as an adjunct, but not as your primary way of protecting yourself. Be hardwired when you're home, and then reduce your electric fields. We haven't even talked about electric fields at your desk. So in the daytime, your computer could be ungrounded. Your laptop could be ungrounded. Or if you are aware of these things and you switch to hardwired connections for your iPad and iPhone and some Androids, like you have to put them in airplane mode, but you can still do a lot of tasks on those devices in airplane mode. You can't send and receive, make and receive calls on the number that you get from your cell company. You can't use FaceTime, and you can't use iMessage. But you can do all of those things on a MacBook, Mac Mini, or iMac that you've synced up through Apple ID. And they have similar things with Google Voice between an Android and a PC. So we want people to shift to their computer for things or be hardwired, but you have to put it in airplane mode. You have to turn off the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth on the computer. So these are daytime things. But then in addition to that, the electric fields, if you plug in the power cord to a MacBook, with the MacBook Air I have over there, with the little USB ports, they don't give you the extension cable that has the 3-prong plug in the end that everyone got for the MacBooks prior to that model. So everyone's using that little adapter that has the 2 blades that swing out, and then you plug in the transformer. You're ungrounded. And people are saying, I put the thing in airplane mode and I have the Ethernet cable that connected. Why am I not feeling well at my computer? I feel zapped. I feel wired and tired at the end of a half an hour. It's because their electric fields are shot to the moon because of that. So you've got to take that little adapter off and find the extension cable you had from your previous MacBook, slide that on there and plug it in, and make sure with your circuit alert, a circuit tester, that the 2 yellow lights come on. The outer light has to be on and as bright as the middle light to indicate that that ground is working. And then when you put your hands on and you test with your body voltage meter, the body voltage meter, guys, is so valuable. Even in the daytime, you can hold the cylinder against your palm here and the meter in one hand, and you put your other hand on a properly grounded laptop, and that number goes to nothing. I mean, it's a little bit because you're shorting yourself out. You're shorting out the meter. You're grounded here, you're grounded here. So the meter obliges by going down. That's how you know.
I have an iPad Pro, and there's a very short video on our website that shows me sitting at my desk. I had like 800 millivolts just sitting at the desk with the iPad on the table in front of me.
And if you touched it, it probably went to the thousands.
No. When I touch it and it's
it
not
goes
plugged
down.
It's okay. No, it changes hardly anything at all.
Because you're grounded.
Yeah, but when I plug the iPad, the charging cord in, and I touch the iPad, which of course is how you use an iPad, you touch it, 40,000 volts.
Yes.
So always use your laptops, your iPads, your devices unplugged. And then, if the battery's not going to last all day because it's an older or what have you, plug it in while you're on your lunch break, plug it in the evening.
Or ground it, Anthony. If you have the right
grounding is an option. You can still get those grounded, as you said, with the ground on it. And I've done that actually. And you're absolutely correct. When I do that with the grounded cord and I touch the iPad, you're absolutely correct. My body voltage went down.
Now, if you're on battery, and you want to get on the internet, and you plug in an Ethernet cable, which you can do on an iPhone, iPad, and any computer. You just have to have the right adapter, because even the new computers are so thin, they don't have an RJ45 Ethernet jack on them anymore like the thicker ones did. So you need a USB-C to Ethernet or Thunderbolt to Ethernet for an older MacBook, or a USB-A to Ethernet for a thin Microsoft laptop. But you have to have or Lightning to Ethernet for the iPhone and iPad, but you have to have a model that is grounded, that allows the grounding to go through, and not all of them do. The ones that I have on my website, createhealthyhomes.com, on the store, and I'm not doing this to get business. I have found the ones I test, everything I've tested that I recommend on there, and just about everything. And if I didn't have it, I've tested it at somebody's house, even if I don't own it myself and carry it in my bag. But the point is, it has to be grounded, and then the Ethernet cable has to be grounded and shielded, meaning it has metal tips on the ends of it. Cat 6A and Cat 7 do, Cat 8. And then at the other end, you've got the Ethernet grounding adapter kit, and that gets plugged in, and then that grounds whatever you plug into it. It's a little metal plug-to-plug adapter of RJ45 that's grounded, and Sean Cranish at electrohealth.com has come up with that. I have a link to that from my website. So then you're fine. Then you're good. By the way, I just read yesterday that the new update for, so this is like hot off the presses. It's not good. The new 15.1 iOS Apple operating system upgrade for iPhones to 15.1 does not allow you to access the internet through a cable that you plug in through the Lightning to Ethernet adapter. That's what I'm hearing. It doesn't work, because this is an unfortunate development, and people are reporting this on EMF websites. And here in Los Angeles, I mean, 90% of my clients have iPhones. So,
Yeah, I'm on 15.2. So 15 is the latest, and 0.2 is there may be a 0.3 now, but that's the latest upgrade.
so I'll have to check and see. It's 15 point something now. So I didn't pay attention to the, and you may not even know when your phone, these things update themselves. I mean, we know that something's going, it says phone was updated, please restart. We
Right.
don't know what happened. It's an update. But
Right.
so that everyone could be getting the 15 point whatever right now in the last.
Yeah, yes, if they've got the latest upgrade, which apparently less than 50% of Android users have the latest version, whereas over 90% of Apple product users do have the latest upgrade. It's just the different worlds that we live in. But
Yeah.
Oram, I really appreciate, we've been in it now for a while, and I'm sure a lot of people who've stuck with us this long, their brains are probably puddles of mush with the amount of
Happens all the
information
time.
you shared. And I really appreciate you're obviously an amazing
Thank you.
source of information. I highly recommend people go to your website, createhealthyhomes.com. You have got a phenomenal amount of information there for people to look at, and it's information that they can rely upon for all the reasons that you've shared. This has come from years of experience and products that you've tested personally.
Yeah, and
So
just lots of clients, day after day, 6 days a week, for years and years and years. So
yeah, and we would like to thank you as a company, EMFSafe, for recommending our product. And I know you sell
Thank you.
quite a few, and you've got clients that
Yep.
have used it, and you're getting good feedback from them, testimonies of how much it's helped them, along with the
very
other
convenient.
things that you have recommended to them. So once again, Oram Miller, building biologist. His contact information is there on the website, on our links here. And Oram, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Anthony. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give this knowledge. And thank you for being so dedicated to this, you and Dan in your company. So you're really helping to spread the word and give people something, a real important tool to help make their house and their lives safer and more healthy. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.